everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So I got a lot on my mind, but I'm really only going to talk about two things today. One is a failure of leadership, and I'm going to go over what I mean by that in regards to this PC thing that's going on. And by the way, this isn't just going on at Prime. It's going on at other big companies, and we'll talk about that. But the first thing I want to get to, not really history, but every once in a while I like to have a viewer mail kind of thing with my detractors. And just to preface this, I have this YouTube channel because I enjoy learning new things, and I learn a lot by finding content, right? So I enjoy learning new things. I enjoy sharing them. Sometimes I might be considered what you would call an oversharer, although I'm working on that, but this gives me an outlet for that. And I really do enjoy the community, the camaraderie. Like I was at a Walmart in Indiana the other morning, and another Prime driver was there, and she and her partner were there, and I got to talk to them for a while. It was nice meeting new people, and stuff like that. And then I was at a truck stop later in the day, and this dude, I don't know who he drives for. He was coming out of the Loves with his backpack like he just got a shower, and I didn't think anybody would even recognize me because I had my hood pulled up and it was cold and windy. I was kind of looking like this, and I walked by him, and he's like, "Hey man, I love your channel. I watched that video about descending hills." I'm like, "All right, cool, man. I appreciate you. Be safe out there." So, that's the payoff, right? Look, I don't make any money at this. But every once in a while, and I even am happy, like if somebody says, "Hey, you're wrong about what you said," I always am like, "Really? Let me check." Right? I look stuff up, and I've, when people have told me, "Oh, you're wrong about that," and when I say wrong, I don't mean an opinion, I mean a fact, right? I always, I'll look it up, and if I am, because usually they tell me by comments, I'll be like, "Oh, you're right, I got that wrong. I mixed that up." Sometimes I just can't remember stuff, and people tell me in the comments, so I'm not perfect. I'm not putting myself out there as being like this, total guru on anything really. But, I do think that there's some value here, right? And I know other people think that because they say so, either that or they're just lying to me anonymously, because I usually don't know them face to face anyway. But the other day, the last video I did was on PC. I said something about this PC nonsense, and I gave a bunch of examples of how all sorts of categories are used wrong. So that's a fairly granular kind of trucker thing that we were talking about, right? Like, we weren't talking about just running a business or, something like that. We were talking about something really granular, really out in the weeds, if you will, in the trucking community. Like, what is personal conveyance and all these examples. And even when you give the examples, a lot of times people can't, if they've never done this business, they can't really wrap their head around why it matters what your status is. Just drive your truck somewhere. So anyway, but I got this comment from this person, and I assume it's a guy because his handle is the all-around guy. I don't know what that means. Maybe he's a utility infielder or whatever. He can lay down a really good suicide squeeze. So he comments, right? I don't recognize him. I don't know if he subscribes. So this is what he said. And by the way, I took notes on every single comment that he made, and I made back to him. And these are seriatim, meaning from start to finish, right? So he says, "Man, you should get out of that truck." And then he says EMS, capital E, capital M, capital S, which I don't know what that means. I mean, to me it means emergency medical services, but it might mean something else to him. Anyway, so he says, "Man, you should get out of that truck, EMS, and do what I do. You seem to be well spoken, so you would probably be successful. I make more money than you do, and I keep way more of the money than you do. I am home every night. I work as much as I want, but I usually work Monday through Friday, and I'm usually done working by 4:30 p.m. And so, let me say this. The term well-spoken is not a compliment. And if it is, it's merely a backhanded compliment. And people that are, that are, quote, well-spoken, usually don't use that term. They usually use a term like articulate. And the other thing is, I know that maybe he thought he was complimenting me, but it's like telling, it's like saying, oh, you're strong, for a woman. Or, you're smart, for a black person. I mean, or whatever it is, right? It's not a compliment, okay? And, the other thing is, I do think I'm articulate, but I think anybody that's watched this channel for more than one, and I don't even know how he came across my video, because like I said, it was really granular. But, my background, I've spoken about it in, as it pertains to whatever I'm talking about. So I said, so this is my response. I said, well spoken, huh? I said, gee, thanks. When you grow up and quit deciding someone's worth based on what you think they make, check back with me. Because he's like, oh, well, you seem smart, right? Not you're smart. You seem smart, but, you're wasting your talent because I obviously make more money than you, right? And I've spoken about this, right? If it was about the money, I would have just kept practicing law. I'd have figured out how to, make mid six figures or something. I would have had something going on, right? And so then, in response to what I just said about gee, thanks, he says, that's it. Like he's my dad or something, right? He's like, that's it. I changed my mind about you. So that tells me that he's really not that good at figuring out people. He's like, I changed my mind about you. I thought maybe you were too sharp to be living in a truck like a complete goofball. So now he is insulting my intelligence, right? Because he's saying, I thought you were too sharp. In other words, he now thinks I'm just dumb enough to drive a truck. I see that you are exactly where you should be. Well, that's true, because I picked this. You should never, ever quit what you're doing. Well, I probably will quit at some point. I mean, I'm 60. I don't want to, I don't think I want to be doing this when I'm 80. But as long as I enjoy it and my health is good, I'll probably keep doing it until my wife says, hey, I'm retiring. She's quite a bit younger than me, but she's like, I'm retiring, you need to retire, okay? But you see where this is going, right? Like this guy, he decided that I might be good for his, that he could like mentor me or something. So then I said, so after he said, you should never ever quit what you're doing and all that, I thought you were too sharp. I said, thanks for proving my point, you conceited little prick. Your definition of success is apparently some American dream bullshit MLM myth. And MLM, for those of you who don't know, multi-level marketing. Think like Amway, right? I do what I do because I like it, not because I'm trying to impress a vapid neophyte like you, right? And that's true. Like, I think I've seldom, if ever, met a trucker who couldn't do something else. And a lot of the people that I know in trucking, and you know or are familiar with them, some of them have YouTube channels, they have all sorts of background. There's all sorts of retired military people, retired, cops, firefighters, retired, I've met people that are teachers, all sorts of business, people that were accountants, mortgage business people, you name it, right? like people decided, okay, I'm gonna do something different. And in fact, the gal I was talking to at the Walmart, she worked in the dental like prosthetics industry, you know, which is highly skilled. You know, you can't, you can't just be like, yeah, I made 800 pairs of the same size dentures. I'm sure they'll fit people. You know, that's not how it works, right? So anyway, you know, it just bothers me that somebody thinks that some trucker could do better just because they have you know, all their teeth and are well spoken. So then he says, so this is after I called him a conceited little prick. He said, which by the way, he does not deny. Then he says, I guess you're a genius then. I don't know that I'm a genius. I'll just leave it at that. Keep laying around in that truck. I guess he didn't see my video where I do push-ups while fueling. Like a pathetic goofball while some other man probably... Now this is where it really goes like sideways, because I must have struck a nerve. He goes, like a pathetic goofball while some other man probably lives around with your wife. I think he meant, what did he mean? Lives, I don't know, screws around with your wife. That's even if you have one. So in other words, I'm not really well spoken. I'm actually, what did he say? I'm not sharp. And I'm a pathetic goofball. And if I have a wife, she's having an affair, but I probably don't have one. As if being single is somehow, you know, a slam on somebody. Dude, you're a bachelor? You're a freaking loser. So, then I said this. Because, you know, he brought my wife into it, right? That's not very nice. It's not polite. I said, sorry I hurt your feelings. If you were more thorough, you'd have watched dozens of my videos. I always invite people that are hating on me to like watch everything they can. You'd have watched dozens of my videos and would know I retired from the military and practiced law for 16 years. You also might not have embarrassed yourself by humble bragging about your faux awesomeness to someone you thought wanted your tutelage, but who was perfectly content. By the way, my wife of over 30 years is likely not having an affair. I say that for several reasons, including that my youngest would rat her out, or one of my other 5 kids would, that my wife is quite busy with her job, grad school, and our home. And she's always said I'm the only man she'd spend time with. Not that I'm all that, but because she doesn't need a man. I haven't heard back from him since. Crickets. So here's the deal, Mr. What's his name again? The all-around guy. So I don't think you're really the all-around guy. I think you got a lot of shortcomings and you're not really ready for varsity. And, you know, like my grandmother would have said to you, just stick to your knitting. You know, don't worry about Terry on Tim Travels. He's not perfect, but he has a plan. So anyway, that's viewer mail. So let me talk about leadership for a minute, and let me just say this, right? I have been in many leadership positions over the years. Certainly in the military, I, you know, led very large groups of people. I say very large, not like, you know, an infantry division, but certainly over 100 people at a time, right, would be under my cognizance. I've, you know, depending on, you know, what I was up to, watched, anyway, get the point. I lectured on leadership at the Naval Academy from time to time in the capstone class for the first class midshipmen. But anyway, I want to talk about corporate leadership, and this is endemic in America, or corporations, and I say in America because there's a different mindset in a lot of foreign corporations, like in Japan or Germany or, Sweden, or, even in Canada, I feel like there's a little bit of a different, idea of what leadership means. And what I'm talking about is the trucking industry, right? Like this issue with PC and with hours of service logs in general. So, apparently at the meeting on Friday, they were like, oh, well, our incidence of people violating personal conveyance it has, gone through the roof, right? And I'm like, people, especially at the lowest levels in an organization, they're kind of like water. They'll take the easiest path. But if you channel the water, you can set up a dam, or you can set up, a mill, right? You have to have the water going where you want it. And my analogy means that people, almost everybody is dying for leadership and structure. Even in an organization where people come from all these disparate backgrounds, right? People tend to gravitate towards the expectations that people have for them. Can you imagine what a kid will turn out like if you tell the kid, like, basically every day they're fucked up? I mean, guess what? Next thing you know, Charles Manson is here, or some other bad person. Now, I'm not saying that there's not other factors, and the reason I bring up Charles Manson is because I said to my wife recently, I don't even know how it came up, but I said, it's surprising that it would have been surprising if Charles Manson turned out differently than he did if you know anything about his childhood, right? But people gravitate towards the expectations you place on them. And here's what's been going on, and this is why I say it's a leadership failing, right? Now, the guy that runs Prime has been at it for many, many, many years, and he has people that he trusts. But the problem isn't really him, right? Like, he, maybe he doesn't do a lot with the company on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I probably wouldn't if I was in his shoes and I was his age. And I'm not, he's a very spry guy, but he's, in his 70s. So it's like he entrusts, and this is a big operation, right? So he has to entrust his subordinates to do the right thing and to make sure that they're doing what's best for the company. And for far too long, when, the cotton was high, the people that he entrusted with this job of running his company, they ignored problems that they saw. Why? Because the company was making a bunch of money, and I guarantee that a lot of these people, you can find their pictures on the Prime website, they were getting fat ass bonuses every year because the company was killing it. Okay? I don't know that they didn't last year either, but whatever. That's not my place to decide. But they ignored the fact that many, many drivers were actually abusing PC and violating the hours of service rules in other ways. But here's what I think was going on. And I say this not because I have any inside information. I'm not like Lyle. Lyle's the chosen one. He could talk to anybody and get the truth. But I've watched a lot of organizations over the years. A lot of organizations. I've been inside at organizations like the outside GC to a startup business, that was taking in millions of dollars in funding. I've helped people start companies that are successful in different industries. But I see how things work internally, right? And a lot of times when nobody's on your butt, whether it's a regulator or it's, some internal, audit people, you just go along fat, dumb, and happy. But you know that your employees are cutting corners. And so here's what I think was happening a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years ago, right? The people and I'll just pick reefer, right? Because it's what I know about a little bit. people in reefer operations, right, they care about several things, but one of them, for example, is OTD, right? On-time delivery, not having service failures. But here's the thing that's interesting. I'll bet you that one of the metrics that these people up the chain of command concern themselves with is OTD and, percentage of service failures for a given team, right? So for a given fleet. So the guy that only had a 0.9% service failure rate, he's probably was viewed as being more successful or better for the team, better for the company than the guy that had a 3% service failure rate in his fleet. But here's what I think these upper people missed. And it might be out of ignorance, it might be out of willfulness, but they never said, okay, you have more service failures than, let's say that 3% was the upper end, right? You have more service failures than anybody else in this part, because I assume, because there's so many fleet managers, they have their own operations people who then report to reefer operations, etc., right? There's a few layers in there. But did anybody ever go back and say, well, hey, why is, everybody wants to know why the guy who's doing poorly is doing poorly, but they never ask why the person that's successful is successful, right? I mean, think about all these people in the news media that you've heard of that are successful, and a few, and lifestyles of the rich and famous, and next thing you know, they're getting indicted by the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York for securities fraud, right? When something's too good to be true, it usually is, right? Look at this George Santos clown that's now in Congress. I don't think his name, I don't even think is George Santos. He says he's gay. I don't even know if that's true. Like, I think the guy lies about so much stuff that it's hard to keep up, right? But yet he's successful. But he's a pathological liar. He's a grifter. He's a criminal. And by the way, he is going to get wrung out. Mark my words. But anyway, so nobody said, oh, you have the best OTD. You have the best service failure percentage. How do you do it, right? Well, if the answer is the way they did it was what we've all probably experienced is fleet managers, night dispatchers telling you, hey man, just make it happen. Well, look, when somebody has 350 miles to go and they only have 5 hours of drive time, right? These trucks don't go that fast. The only way there's going to be an on-time delivery is if somebody's cooking the books, right? If somebody's misusing something. Either the last few miles they go 18 miles an hour because they're in yard move the whole time, or they're doing something else, which is going to be PCing and then getting back on the clock or whatever to deliver. Which, by the way, will cover up a PC malfeasance a lot of times. Because they target, like, did you go into a shipper or receive into on PC? That's a huge red flag. But here's the thing, right? I've had people say this to me. Man, I can't do anything to help you. I'll be like, oh, I'm not going to make it. Well, just, I don't know what to tell you, man. Well, when they say I don't know what to tell you, what they really mean is, well, just make it happen. Well, there's only a couple of ways to just make it happen. But I've talked to people who've said that some fleet managers were more explicit. They would be like, dude, use personal conveyance. Just get there, right? And I've talked to a couple of drivers who said that they've actually had fleet managers. By the way, as an attorney, I would not advise this. Fleet managers put in messages that they should use personal conveyance. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you put anything in a message, here's my message to fleet managers as your friendly, not actually your lawyer, don't put anything in a message that you don't want to be discovered in a lawsuit, because it's all discoverable, okay? And, you know, just, I know your phone calls are probably recorded. I think they are. I can't imagine why they wouldn't be. But man, do not put it in a message, because it's once you do that, it's never gone. Somebody can find it. And anybody that knows how to do forensic research can find that. So, you know, that's why I have a problem. So all of this is why I have a problem with this PC thing. Is because this problem has been festering for years. Yet, with the exception of the safety guru, the safety manager, officer, I don't even know what his title is, pretty much everybody's the same. In other words, everybody that was the leadership at the time all these depredations were committed is still in their jobs, right? So if we had this huge increase, you know, why is it that no one's getting canned? And by the way, I don't think Steve Field was canned. I think he did probably retire. Maybe he was asked to retire, but still. And this could be coincidental. But even then, supposing for a moment that he was the fall guy, he's not the one responsible, right? Hours of service aren't a safety thing, right? They're a compliance thing that's based in safety, but it's not an accident, right? So I don't even know why. Safety department worries about one thing, accidents and CSA score. But really accidents, we all know that, crashes. They're the crash department. But this is a failure of leadership. And this happens all over America all the time in all sorts of companies, right? The higher ups, you know, do not, you know, they don't have the skill set in a lot of cases. They just kind of like nepotism their way into jobs. Or they're just, you know, they're golfing buddies, which is, you know, cronyism, right? They're just buds with somebody. And I felt like, you know, I mean, let's be candid. The company's based in Springfield, Missouri. There's no trucking company that I can think of. There's probably some, but that are based in like really cool places where I'd want to live. Like they're always out in Podunkville. And Springfield, even though it's a large city, it's the third largest city in Missouri. No one who says I'm moving to Missouri, you know, probably is like, oh yeah, I looked at all these places in Missouri to live, and by far Springfield's the best. I mean, if you like cities, I mean, St. Louis or KC would probably be up there. Maybe, you know, if you like, I don't know, country music shows, maybe Branson. But, you know, I just don't, I mean, I've been to Springfield. I'm not saying it's the worst place on earth, but I'm not saying it's not the worst place on earth. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't, you know, it's very provincial. And, you know, all these people in this company that just come to work and they never leave until they're like ready to die, that creates an atmosphere when there's not really top down somebody pushing to do better, to get better every day. It's really easy to just fall into bad habits, bad policies, bad, you know, leadership, bad management. And you see it all over the place. I mean, like Werner, I guess, did away with personal conveyance for their drivers. They're a huge company. Why did they do that? Well, I'm guessing because they were worried about their CSA score. But instead of worrying about their CSA score, they should have worried about leadership and, you know, training drivers and not making unreasonable expectations. You know, and drivers that can't manage their clocks, retrain them. You know, that's the other thing that and this is kind of a tangent, but I saw an article recently about safety. And, you know, I've had some issues with the safety department because I don't feel like there's this holistic culture of safety at Prime. And, you know, one of the things that these people identified, they were like safety experts, one of the things they identified was like rote training, where every time you're in a safety meeting or brief, you hear and see the exact same things. And if you've ever been to the PSC, if that doesn't ring a bell, I don't know what would. Every single time, the exact same videos, the exact same worksheet. Then you get on the simulator, right? Stevie Wonder could pass that class, okay? It's the exact same thing over and over and over. And that, you know what that is? That's just them phoning it in, right? They're checking a box, but they don't really care that much about the actual outcome. They just want to be able to say they checked the box. And, you know, that's fine. But, you know, like the saying goes, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. And drivers, they're, you know, people are water, right? They're going to flow to the place with the least resistance. So until you build a dam, until you put a mill in, until you generate hydroelectricity, right? That water's just flooding all over. It's going here, it's going there. Sometimes it's under pressure, sometimes it's not. And when you don't have leadership, right, your basement's moldy. Man, that went sideways in a hurry. Anyway, I'm going to deal. I'm not leaving Prime because, again, the grass is never greener on the other side of the fence. You know, I shouldn't say never. It is sometimes. But, you know, when you get very far beyond the fence, you might find out that there's no more grass because the cows ate it all or something. But, you know, this is a leadership failure, and what they're doing is not, it's going to fix the symptom, but it's not going to fix the problem. And the water's going to flow somewhere else, and it's going to manifest itself in some other way. And I don't know what that is. I mean, I could imagine some things, but you know, my message to Prime is, if you work at Prime and you work in the shiny building and you really actually care about the company, you'll figure out a way to get better at this, not just do things the same as we always have done. Because all this is just, you know, a Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Especially, I hope the all-around guy keeps watching. Take care. Bye.